say to you that you are the curriculum coordinator of the blank, blank, blank Christian school. Now, that was not ugly words. That was just blank Christian school. And I told you that you were the curriculum coordinator and you were responsible for what is going to happen at school, for organizing the curriculum and getting things all lined up and everything. Would you have an idea of your plan of attack? Would you have a strategy? Would you have any steps that you could take? Would you know anything that you could set up or evaluate or help organize the Bible curriculum? Well, now I'll tell you something. You know two things you can do. You know what they are? You can turn to page 108 to pages 108. You know, A, B, C, D, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, however that. One of the girls yesterday asked me if she could number her chart according to the way that I had numbered page 108 in the resource book. I said, that's fine with me, just whatever you want to do. So pages 108, you can turn to that in your resource book, and you will have at least some resource right there to give you some ideas. And the second thing that you know that you can do is you can get on the telephone or you can fax a message to 803-754-4100, extension 3136, and holler, "Help, Miss Phillips." Now, don't you laugh too hard, because that's more than you knew a week ago, right? Right? Okay, all right. That's more than you knew a week ago. I think we can get a little air in here, so the bullets are off. Don't want you to fade out on me again today. But we know that, and you can turn to that and get some help, and you can call us, and we'll do what we can to help you. But let's see if we at least know our basic plan of attack. You know that you are to be putting together, wait before I show you that, sorry. You know that you're going to be putting together your overall curricular arrangement. Remember the things you're going to have to know and the things you're going to plan. So the first thing you're going to plan is you're going to plan this overall curricular arrangement. Then you're going to establish, come on, talk to me, goals. Big ones for curriculum. Big ones for courses that make up that curriculum, and then little smaller ones, but still, what makes up the courses that make up the big curriculum? You've got the big curriculum, you've got your courses, and your courses are divided into units, and then those individual units may be large or small, but eventually they'll all break down to a daily lesson. And so that's your structure. And you know that you've got to come up with some sort of big, overall, broad curriculum goals. Then course goals and unit goals. Now, quickly review. We actually know 4 big, now there are other things, but in this class so far, we know there at least be 4 big overall curriculum goals that we want to get. What's one of them, Lester?
Act right and live right.
All right, you're going to act right, you're going to get right, and live right. You're going to get right with God, live right. Purpose of the Bible. You want that to be one of your big, big goals, to be sure the purpose of the Bible is realized in the lives of your students. What's another one?
Know the structure of the Bible.
That they would know the structure of the Bible. And let's put that in with this whole thing that I think Lester sort of put us together yesterday, was the idea of Bible introduction, how the Bible came to us. But now the structure also could be a part of this thing of Bible skills. How to find places in the Bible, how to use a concordance, how to use a dictionary, how to look up things in background materials and so forth, and how to do cross-references and that type of thing. So we've got that. Now we've got one more. The big one. All right. We would want them to be sure that they would know the pattern of biblical revelation. We at least know those would be 4 things. Now there would be other things. But so far in our studies, we would know that there'd be these 4 big things, at least for the broad curriculum. For courses in our big units, we know at least 2 and possibly 3 things that would be big course goals. what would one of those be? Every course you would have, you would want to be sure you did what with it?
Help students see where it fits into our
All right.
pattern.
You'd want to show them where the slice of the pie is that they're studying. Where does it hit? Where does it come? It comes right here, and then you know what's gone before, what's going to go after, and they see the relationship and how it fit. Another thing that you would want to do would be that within that unit itself, especially if it's a historical narrative unit, what would you want to do? Now, what I'm doing right now is not necessarily on the board anywhere. It's just that we're sort of giving you a little review of some of the goals that we talked about yesterday. What would be another thing we'd want to do within that course? Did I call on somebody? All right.
Maybe this is wrong, but I'll try it anyway. And try to let the students realize the relevancy of their lives.
Oh, of course, right. And that would certainly be something I would come down to that would really relate more or less in a daily type of lesson. But as far as just this overall thing, I'll show them where the slice of the pie fits. I'll show them where their unit fits in the overall story. And within that unit, that course, what will I be wanting them to get?
The big picture.
Well, if I'm teaching Genesis 12 through 50, and my basic characters are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, what would I want them to at least know? The chronological order of their unit. See, now granted, this is chronological order of the whole Bible and where their slice fits into it. But within that unit itself, you would want them to get the chronological tie-in. What goes happening? It's not Abraham and Jacob and then Isaac and Joseph. It's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. All right? So that would be something. Now, there'd be one other thing, too, and I just barely mentioned it yesterday, and that's the business about geography. Any unit that you've got, you would want them to get the geography of that unit. You would want them to feel the, you'd want them to see the historical placement of things. They would understand the geography. Yes.
Can you put customs along with that?
Okay, good, yes. Historical background. And we'll be coming into that a little bit more when we start talking about the teaching the Bible with integrity. But the whole thing about historical background would be certainly a part of that. All right, good. Now then, down to our units. Remember, the little key I gave to that yesterday was you study that unit yourself, the material, and you begin to see themes going through that unit. Did I mention yesterday in here, like Genesis 1 to 11, you'll see the theme, obedience has a consequence of gain, and sin or disobedience has a consequence of loss. Now you'll see that over and over and over and over and over in Genesis 1 to 11. And it's very obvious to see it. You see it all through the Old Testament. But especially in Genesis 1 to 11, because you see that's the need, trying to show the need of a plan of salvation or a need of a plan of redemption. Because sin, consequences are separation from God. And sin has a consequence of punishment, of loss. But obedience, you've got Abel, and even though he obeyed, his obedience consequence was with heaven. But you've got Noah, his obedience was being saved and kept preserved alive. That type of thing. Obedience equals blessing, disobedience equals punishment. So you've got those kind of things. But inherent in the Bible material are the truths or the points or the big issues that you try to get across as big goals to get them to see. All right, now then, individual daily lessons is where you find the applications, the relevancies, and you try to get them to see. Now, what's the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to come up with a tentative list of lesson titles to cover the material in the time that's allotted to me. Now, yesterday we talked a little bit about how you would determine, if you had a 6-week unit, you determine how many lessons you'd have. You'd start off with 30 days, you'd find out how many holidays you've got, you'd take those out, you'd find out something else, and maybe you end up with 15 or 18 lessons is all you're going to be able to teach, content-wise. But when you do that, you're going to come up with some kind of a title for that lesson. And you want to determine how many lessons you're going to need for the teaching days that you have, and you will come up with a tentative list of lessons. Now get that word tentative. because the word tentative means subject to change. And those that are going to be going through the student teaching program in Bible next year, they will, when they first come to their unit, they will prepare their unit lesson titles. And they will call them tentative lesson titles. And they'll prepare their lessons with their tentative lesson titles. But when they come back after their student teaching, they have a little thing that they turn into me that says actual lessons taught. And that does not always look like this. But what you can do to start with, you have to go ahead and get your tentative lesson titles. It looks like this would be a good way to do it. And you're doing fine, you're going to it, and maybe you got 2 or 3 lessons, boy, they're just clicking right along, and then you hit a situation with your class. And you say, uh-oh, that lesson right there will not do. I'll have to change it. I'll have to either put part of it with this one, or change it, or leave it out, or add something else in here. I've got to be sure that something is true right here, that just that lesson by itself is not going to make it happen. I'm going to do something right here. So you may change it, or you may drop it out, or you may combine it with something else, or you may have a lesson that you had for a lesson, and you say, oh, that'll never do. That is too much material. They'll never get it. So you maybe divide into 3 lessons, where you're going to do 1 lesson. Of course, we try to help you not have that big a problem by checking them before you go. But the idea is you come up with tentative lessons. The first year that I did student teaching, I had a fellow by the name of Dan Knudsen, who teaches Bible now in DeKalb Christian Academy in Atlanta. And he called me Miss Tentative Phillips. That was the name he gave me before it was all over. He said, Miss Tentative Phillips. And he said, Miss Phillips, you say that word 50 times every day. Something's tentative, something's tentative. So after he did student teaching, he says, I understand, I understand, I understand. So what you want to do is you've got to come up with some titles. Let's stop right here and be sure that you know what kind of titles. Not this kind of a title. Now this is a bad example. Brands plucked from the burning. Now that's the name of my lesson. That's the title of my lesson I'm going to teach. What lesson am I going to teach? Got any ideas?
Meshach.
All right. She happened to get it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Some people said Isaiah 6, the fire, the coals. And well, see, when you get that kind of a name for a lesson, that's sort of like a little sermon title type thing. You don't want that for your Bible lesson. You want a title that's got the who in it, the what in it, and sometimes even the when and the where. But for sure, the who and the what. The who and the what, sometimes even the when and the where. But for sure, the who and the what. For instance, that lesson should be the 3 Hebrew young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in Nebuchadnezzar's fiery furnace. Now that would be adequate. You would know that that was Daniel 3 and not Isaiah 6. That's the who and the what. Now you could go ahead and add some more details. And of course now sometimes you can get a lesson title. It might be 3 or 4 lessons long. Now don't do 3 or 4 lines long. Don't do that. We don't want that. Just give it enough that we know, a description enough that we know exactly what you're talking about. Here's another one. Keep your cool. What's that one? These are ones I've actually seen, folks. Keep your cool.
Jesus
That could be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego too, couldn't it? Peter. All right, when? All right, when he cut Malchus's ear off. All right, that's a good guess. Keep your cool.
When Saul tried to kill David.
All right, Saul trying to kill David, okay, or David running from him. All right. You see, it could describe all sorts of things. What you want is a title that will help you pinpoint scripturally. So this one is Genesis 26. This was the lesson title for Genesis 26, 1 through 6, and combining with it 12 through 33. And what it is, it's Isaac refusing to fight Abimelech over the wells that Abraham had dug. And that was the lesson. Keep your cool, He was a peacemaker, so he didn't get angry. He just kept going. So it's better to say Isaac's refusal to fight Abimelech over the wells, Genesis 26, 1 to 6, and 12 through 23. That would be a 33. That'd be a much clearer title than Keep Your Cool. Hang in there. I won't even let you guess that one because people have told me Judas and everything else. So that's Genesis 39 through 41, 45. Joseph, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife and thrown into prison. Now, let's just go ahead and say Joseph in prison as a result of the false accusations of Potiphar's wife. So what you want to do is, when you make your list of titles for your lessons, let's make them factual. Let's make them. It really is getting quite stuffy in here, isn't it? Would you give that thing about 2 turns, and that will cut it to high and then to medium. And then Lester, would you open the windows back there? I think the blowers are not on. They were. This morning it was so cool in here, I cut them off, but I'm not sure. I think that's the only one that really works in this room. So they're not doing, are they? Okay. I've got them on, but they're just not. Thank you. That would help us a little bit. Appreciate it. All right, good. Now then, you get the point. You get the point about the titles. You want them factual. The who, the what, and even sometimes the when and the where will help you. But be sure the who and the what. Now, what are we going to do? All right, we're going to go next. We're going to make out our lesson plans for those individual lessons and actually make up our lesson plans. Now, in connection with that, I want to be sure that I get you clear on one thing. Making up an individual lesson plan does not mean you have to reinvent the wheel. That is, you don't have to, in other words, you just say, I'm just not going to look at anything and get any ideas or helps. There's a place for that in time, but not first. So put that on hold, because in a little bit, 2 or 3 days, we're going to come back and we'll pick up this integrity issue. We'll start talking about the individual daily lesson, and we'll work some more with that. So let's move on down here to this. It says plan and organize the unit. It says projects, memory works, activity materials, visuals, songs, and so forth. All of those things can be happening as you are going through organizing your material. And as you're going through putting it all together, all those things can be happening. Projects, things that your students would do. And see, if you're going to do that, you might have 2 days set aside for project day. That's going to take 2 days away from your 18 lessons you're going to do. So you might end up with just 16 lessons you're going to teach. Follow? Memory work. Do you want just a separate type of memory work away from your unit, just individual, like just a topical memory work or something like that? Or do you want to tie your memory work in with your lessons? If you do tie your memory work in with your lessons, the thing you've got to watch is that you may end up overwhelming them with memory verses, and they won't ever really master them. Or would you rather take a passage that will be descriptive perhaps of your whole unit, or explanatory or applicable to your whole unit, and do that? I know a teacher, well, it was Miss Overstreet, who used to, when she would teach Old Testament survey, had her students memorize Hebrews 11. Because you see, Hebrews 11 is all by faith in all those people. And it was sort of like a survey of the Old Testament in memory. I've known a number of people who've taught the life of Jesus, and they've taken that Philippians passage, that Philippians 2 passage, and memorized that whole Philippians 2 passage about describing him and his coming and emptying himself and coming. I've also known, like Psalm 1, like the godly man, the blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, and so the ungodly and the godly man, memorizing Psalm 1 along with, say for instance, the Northern Kingdom series, when everything is ungodly. And in order to bring some little positive point in there, to bring in there the godly, and teaching that psalm as a memory package to go with that unit. You see what I'm saying? So that type of thing, you have to decide on that. Activity materials, things that you might have them do, that they might do some research in some historical background books, or where they might be doing some little puzzles or making up little anagrams and this type of thing, that would just be activities that would help reinforce their material. Visual songs, and so forth. The idea is you will be putting those kind of things in with your unit, so that as you're teaching along every day in your unit, you may stop after a few lessons and have a little project. Like, for instance, one fellow who taught the life of Moses did a project, I should have brought it, but you see it, because he took some pictures of it, of a map project. And it was the life of Moses, and the basic, you remember, the part of Moses' life is down there, Egypt, down to Sinai, up in the Kadesh Barnea, up and around to Canaan. And he had that section, and what they did was they did different things. They made flannel maps, made maps out of flannel, and they made these little symbols to represent all their lessons. And they would mix them all up, and then they put their little symbols on it, you know, in the order, chronologically. You see what you're doing there? One of your goals, to see them get the chronology. That would be an activity they could do that would help them to get that goal. And then they did relief maps, you know what that is? You know, when you make them flat and you make them where the mountains will show and where the valleys are down and all this. And they did that for that particular, and had these little flags that put along there, you know, this happened here, this happened here, this happened here, this happened here. So those kind of things are what we would call projects. Those are very, very significant. They're great learning reinforcers, and especially to help with particular things like chronology or geography, that kind of thing. So that's what you want to do. Now then, we are ready for page 108F. After you have done this, and this, remember now we're curriculum planning, after you've done that, you're going to need to know some sources. And here again, this is what I said, as a beginning teacher of Bible. How many beginning teachers of Bible are in here? Well, we're all beginning teachers of Bible. You will need to have something as a guide. You don't have to do it all from scratch. I have a little saying that I give to my beginning teachers who are going out vocationally beginning, and I say, remember now, you can't do everything the first year. You cannot do everything the first year. First year I taught high school Bible, I had one lesson on Bible introduction. I think I told you this yesterday. One lesson on Bible introduction. Well, by the time I left, after I'd taught for 10 years in that public high school, I had a 2-week unit, it was a good one, on how our Bible came to us, Bible introduction. I didn't know that much when I first started teaching. I had to learn a little bit. So every year that you teach, that's part of the problem of teaching. You start off, and then the first year you do this, and the next year you go back and you do a little bit more work on this one, and that expands up to maybe 3 lessons where you just had 2 or the year before, and the next year it's 4 lessons, the next year it's 5 lessons, and the next thing you know is you've got too much material to teach and you'll never get through with all your material. And you have to start slicing and going back. But the idea is you don't have to do it all from scratch yourself. Roxanne Jordan is teaching up in North Carolina, and this is her first year of teaching. And Roxanne is a tremendous communicator and a perfectionist, what I am, who wants to do it absolutely, perfectly, wonderfully, double portion over goods than what it needs to be. And I stayed with her during student teaching when I was traveling this year, and I was real proud of her because she was going to bed at a good time, and she was getting up at a good time, and she was learning how to prepare a lesson in an hour instead of 5, and you know, things like that. And so I was real proud of her. But she was talking about several things she was frustrated about, and I said, remember the little proverb? She says, you can't do everything the first year. I said, okay, don't be so hard on yourself. You can't do everything the first year. Next year you can try that if you want to. But remember, you've got a lot of resources, and that's what I want us to look at right now, just to remind you. You've got printed curricula and unit guides. You've got samples here in those yellow pages. Remember, you've got a gold mine in those yellow pages. And the Bible Curriculum Lab downstairs, your assignment in connection with that. Now, your assignment's on the back of the door here, and I tried to run us off a copy to put downstairs on a machine in here, and it's sick, and it just would not do. So hopefully I'll get one done later today from the library and get over there. But you look on the back of the door here, and let me clarify something. Someone thought that from the assignment sheet, it looked like that every week you would be going to the curriculum lab. It says the assigned group, and the assigned group is on the back of the door. You only go one time for your hour and a half. Now, you can spend any more time if you want to, but you don't have to go every week. Please, if you have any problem about misunderstanding about that, I want to clear that up. Now, your Bible curriculum lab gives you a lot of helps. Now, here's something that's very important, and that is the paragraphed Bibles. One of the things that I found to be of absolute invaluable help to me was this particular edition of the American Bible Society. It's in the King James, but it was a tremendously organized Bible. You start here, and it will have, it's in paragraphs, and it starts here, and it has captions of headings. And you can go through, like the book of Genesis, or any other book, reading the headings on these captions, and you will get the content of the book. Creation, man in the Garden of Eden, man's disobedience, Cain and Abel, the descendants of Adam, the wickedness of mankind, Noah makes the ark, the flood, God's covenant with Noah, Noah's drunkenness, and that was one I always left out when I first started teaching because I didn't know what to do with it. But after a while, I decided what to do with it. And I put it in the framework of the conflict of the ages. That here was a critical man in God's economy. And any time that, and you can see this all through, you've got Abraham, you've got David, you've got all God's key men, and you will see a terrible moral failure in their lives. I view that from the perspective of Satan trying to destroy God's promise. And when he would hit these critical people like this, he was doing everything he could to disrupt God's program. He knows God's character. He knows that God has to punish sin. And the idea is if he can mess up a man that God's chosen or pulled out, and just like Job, you've got that in a real picture there in that poem of Job, and Satan's, is going to try to get him, and God says he's my man. He won't let him. So that's how I handle that. That was free. Okay, here we go. Descendants of the sons of Noah, the Tower of Babel, the descendants of Shem, the call of Abraham. Abraham and Lot separate. Abraham rescues Lot. No, you see what I'm doing? You can take those headings and you can read through the book of Genesis and you can get it. When I was a student here, Mr. Sells, whom I had referred to earlier, he would give us assignments like skim the Pentateuch and see such and such. And as a poor little old kid, you look at it, skim the Pentateuch. That's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But if I'd had one of these kind of Bibles, I could have skimmed it a little bit better. And what he would be trying to get us to do would be see big overall things. Well, 9 times out of 10, we just end up putting something down. We went to class and he'd tell us what he wanted. But, for somebody who didn't know beans about the Bible and to skim the Pentateuch, that's quite a question to answer for your homework. But you see what you can do? If you get something like this, it can help you, and you go through, and this is the organization or the content. Now, a paragraph Bible that has headings on it. There's several others. I've got one over here that's the Pilgrim edition of the Bible. It does the same kind of thing. And it's got the titles and the different ones. You may have a study Bible that's done the same kind of thing. I have found this one to be particularly good because it's not encumbered. It doesn't get little teeny, but it says big hunks. And it's a very helpful thing when you're getting ready to prepare lessons. Lesson titles. Now, let me show you one more thing that's very important. There are 2 Bibles that I want you to be sure you're aware of that are chronologically arranged. One is called the Narrated Bible. And I had a copy, and it walked off on somebody's 2 legs. And I don't know who, and it's gone. But this Narrated Bible has the fame of being compiled by Kevin Bryant's uncle. And so the Narrated Bible, and it's put out by Harvest Publishers, Harbest. And LaGard Smith is the author. And what it is, it takes the history part and then puts in whatever happens there. Like the life of David, it'll put the Psalms that fit wherever that they know, like the life of David. The same thing with like Solomon's writings, it would be fit in wherever Solomon would come. So it's what's called the Narrated Bible. The other one is called the Reese Chronological Bible, R-E-E-S-E, the Reese Chronological Bible. That's also in the King James. The Narrated Bible is the NIV. It's put out by Bethany Press, and the gentleman who did it was a Mr. Reese, R-E-E-S-E. Now, this was just recently in a CBD
that what you call that thing? A CBD catalog, yeah, CBD catalog. And, but I know that you could get them through the bookstore here, and you might be able to find them through this company. Might be cheaper. But that is a very, very valuable tool for you. I used to tease my high school students and tell them that one day I was going to write a Bible that was in, because they would say, you know, we'd be going along with something. I said, now, put a note right here in your Bible. The story continues in da 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 da, and then they have to jump over, you know, several books to get to it. And they said, Miss Phillips, what does it do that for? And they said, no wonder we don't understand what the story is, you know. And I said, well, now, some of these days, I'm going to publish me a Bible. And, of course, they believed me, everything I said. And I was just teasing, because at that time, there was no such thing as one of these. But somebody else evidently got the same idea I had, and to try to put one together. So that is a very helpful tool if you get you one of those. Now, something else you can use are the Overstreet workbooks. And you've heard of those before. And I'll tell you a very fact of life, I do not know what I would have done the first year I taught high school Bible if I had not had Volume 1 and Volume 2 of this book. Because what it did was it helped me, she has by sheets, by pages, organized different steps through the Bible that will help you chronologically to follow what's there. She has done an absolute masterful job. Remember that this is Volume 1, History, Volume 2, History. Volume 3 goes back and puts the literature into the Old Testament history and fixes it on there chronologically. Then Volume 2 has Volume 4, which is the teachings of Christ and His church, that fits into the chronology of the New Testament. And that is a very, very helpful tool for you. Remember I told you that I did not push these for student use? There are several reasons. One is the format. You realize that most of them, if you look at them, are just a very poor mimeographed type of production. Well, I had a phone call the other night from one of the teachers who one of our student teachers worked with at Charlotte Christian. And she said, I understand that there are, because I had told her about these, she says, I understand that there are tests that are made up to go with these with these books. And I said, yes, there are. And I haven't told y'all that, but they are. We haven't got them organized down in the bookstore enough that we could put them all together and say, these are the tests for Volume 1, these are the tests for Volume 2, and so forth. But they are down there in stacks. And she said, I understand that there are tests that goes with this. And I said, yes, there are. She said, well, could you get them for me? I said, yes, I think I can, but it might take me a little while to get them organized. She said, well, and I thought to myself, what does she want with this test? And I didn't say anything. And then she said, I'll tell you what I've been doing. And she had permission to do this. And she said, and she's the computer whiz at the middle school. And she's a middle school teacher. She teaches 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in middle school. And she has the computer lab, and she's in charge of it, along with some math classes that she teaches. And she also teaches some Bible classes to the 8th graders. And she said, I'm a big one for inductive Bible study. And so she said, I got to looking at those books. And she says, I decided I'd do a little experiment. So she went to the computer, and she typed out, real pretty on the computer, the lesson sheet. And she's been giving those to her students who, on the computer, in Bible class, go back and answer their questions, you see, on the things. And, of course, that's a big deal to be able to do that. And that's enough motivation right there, you know, to keep them going on the word processor to be doing this. And she said they are eating it up. And she says they're asking all kind of questions, and she says we've just had all kind of fun. And she says, I just don't have time to make a test, and so I thought if I could get the test that go with them, I could use the test. So, just because I warn you about something doesn't mean that you can't innovatively do something with it and use it, maybe in a way which I don't even suggest or recommend. But individual groups can be dealt with differently. Like I had a lot of high school students, a number of high school students that took high school Bible, that were so motivated to study the Bible, they would have even taken those mimeograph sheets and done them, because they just wanted to find out what the Bible is all about. But I don't recommend it because of the type of reproduction it is. But they'll give you a little idea that you can use them. Those are absolutely wonderful for you when you're putting your curriculum together. You know what we're talking about right now? We're talking about units.
How am I going to decide where I'm going to get those 18 lessons that's going to cover that Northern Kingdom period? You with me? Or where it's going to cover Genesis, or what I'm going to do. Walker workbooks. Now, I haven't mentioned these, but these have a wonderful history to them. They were authored by a CBC graduate school graduate from that famous class of Mr. James Hatch, Miss Sarah Petty, and Mr. Will Norton, and Miss Catherine Walker. And they had their 50th reunion a few years ago here, and they took this place by storm. And the two ladies gave their testimonies in chapel and blew everybody away. And two men spoke for the weekend. But Catherine Walker put these together when she was teaching Bible in Bluefield, West Virginia. She was the person who arranged that curriculum up there and was the person who began that program over 50-something years ago. And so this workbook is an Old Testament workbook. It's much simpler than the Overstreet book, and Missy is grinning because she had this in high school Bible. And there are some wonderful maps in here that you, if you haven't seen these are wonderful maps. These are published by Moody Press. You can still buy them, the Old Testament book and the New Testament book. But you will also, when you go to the curriculum lab, not only see these separately, but when you look at the Abeka lessons, Abeka curriculum, you will discover that they have two courses along with a number of others. One is called Old Testament Survey and the other is called New Testament Survey. And the Old Testament Survey is based upon Miss Catherine Walker's book. And just for the fun of it, for those of you who do lesson plans for Miss Cooper for Field Ed, and those of you who will be doing lesson plans for student teaching in Bible, I'll just tell you, this won't cut it for us. This won't cut it. What they've done is they've taken the book, they've organized it, and come up with a little lesson plan. And basically, it's no real teaching plan. It's just some information that just organizes things. And I see Mark start smiling and saying, hey, this won't do it either. So you have to do a lot more than this, folks. But nevertheless, this is the material that they have put together there. Now, quickly, publishing companies of Sunday school material. Charles Covington, who was here for the weekend, used to keep me on the straight and narrow, and he still works at it. But Charles was always making wisecracks and comments about my materials that I would pull out. And he was forever commenting about some of my manuscripts. Well, here are some of my manuscripts. They are yellowed with age. Now, I'm not going to tell you how long ago I put these together, but I'll tell you what I did. When I graduated from CBC and I began teaching Bible in the public schools and had to put lessons together and units together and so forth, I realized I needed some help. And at that time, you could buy, all at one time, all of the Scripture Press Sunday School quarterlies for grades 1 through 6. In other words, you didn't have to wait until the year they published that quarter. You could just buy the whole thing all at one time. You could do the same thing with Gospel Light Publishing. So what I did was, I am a pack rat. You can see my office, my file cabinet. You would know that. And every once in a while, I get these little feelings that I might want to throw something away, and I submerge it. I just squash it down. I don't ever throw anything away. But it's getting to be a real problem. I ordered all these books, and I found that they giveaways down at the MRD, and back in those days it was the visual aids department, and they'd give these things away, and I'd pick them up and see what it was. And I had a whole bunch of these materials, and a whole bunch of this, and a whole bunch of that. And then I ordered the ones I didn't have. And I sat down, and I cut them all apart, and I arranged them in little black notebooks in chronological order from the Bible. And I've got about 12 of these little notebooks that are full of these Sunday school quarterlies, all cut up, arranged chronologically. Okay, I see you're smiling. You got it, all right. And what I could do then is, see, I could take, if I was going to be saying preparing lessons on Joshua, I could go in my little books, and I could find in my little books what they have done for, I don't know where it is right now, but what they had done for the book of Joshua. Not that I would necessarily take these lessons and teach these lessons like this, but what it would do, it would help me to take this lesson, see what scripture they put together for the lesson, and how they had organized it. And it helped me to get a picture of the information a lot faster.
And that's how I use it. And many of my curricula that I put together, are those yellow pages in your notebook that basically was put together by lesson titles from doing this kind of thing. And you can do that, and it can be of help to you. Now, quickly, one last thing. One or two last things. Take your Bible notes from CBC and CBS or whatever notes you have. Especially progress on doctrine. Oh, start with the published curriculum you'll see downstairs, excuse me. Then take your notes from CBC, CBS, and especially progress of redemption, since progress of doctrine is what used to be called, progress of redemption is what's called now. And just put them all together. And then add a whole bunch of buckets of blood and sweat and tears, and then add a whole bunch of time, and you can do it. Now, folks, this is not the kind of thing you can throw together on Saturday night or Sunday. It takes time, it takes work, it takes organizing, it takes putting it together. Now, quickly, one very important thing. We don't have this book, remember? And what we're trying to do to help you be able to put a Bible curriculum together is acquaint you with what's available, that's what we've been trying to work with, expose you to the steps that you've got to take to do it, that's what we've been doing these last 2 or 3 days. And then there is one do it. We're going to give you a little kindergarten experience of preparing a unit, the building blocks of a curriculum. And you come back tomorrow, same time, same station, and we'll do it. Okay? You're dismissed. Miss Phillips.
Doris, do you know when Dr. Reynolds' chapel is going to be continuing for the Hell time? Is that tomorrow? No, that's Friday.
That's my project, class teacher training. That's my professional project, so I probably not.
All right, okay, I would love to be able to get all sorts of input.
Our charge.
How heavy?
Yeah, I was going to submit, white paper, 8x11.
Now, do you say the paint or the paper? Paper. The paper, excuse me, the paper. If I were you, I would keep in mind 11 and 10. Because it may not last I think that's 11. I would just go around and I would just feel different ones and just find out. Because it will be, you don't really need to, but oh yeah, that big some sort of artist stuff. No, it's not just music, not just mimeography, but like art. That's art. That's art.